So we had the first night of the DNC here, and a lot of it was based on hope. So as fear was the defining trait of the RNC, hope was the defining trait of the first night of the DNC. There was a lot of more old school political speeches about the middle class and how we can make things better. And it was kind of a refreshing change. If I had not seen the RNC, I might have been more jaded about these speeches, like, oh, here we go again with politicians and the pretty speeches about all the wonderful things they're going to do for the middle class. And some of them are not so good with the teleprompter, and it seems kind of robotic. Others, like Cory Booker, are very energetic. Michelle Obama is actually an excellent speaker. I can't wait for Melania to retell that speech in 2020. It's going to be great. But after I saw the fear and the hate out of the RNC, it was kind of refreshing. Like, oh, hope. Oh, that's pretty good. I like that. that. There was also standard speeches from Bob Casey, and certainly at the very beginning, even before the major speeches began at around 4:30 to 5, when they were gaveling in the convention, there was a consistent booing of Hillary Clinton's name by the Sanders supporters. So there was plenty of drama. And throughout the night, during the primetime speeches, the Bernie Sanders supporters would chant things that the rest of the convention was not happy with. So drama throughout the night. When is Bernie Sanders going to speak? What is Elizabeth Warren going to say? And by the way, outside of the standard speeches, there was also really good speeches. Al Franken's first speech was hilarious. And also made a great point about how Donald Trump's a scam artist. And he's never cared about anyone but himself. And that if you really care about the country, you should elect people who bothered to fight for you. And then Sarah Silverman, until the end, had a great speech about how if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, here's why you should vote for Hillary Clinton. And I said at the time, as we were doing the live play-by-play, they should only get Sarah Silverman to talk about uniting Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton supporters.
Yes.
But then they had to ad-lib a little bit as they were waiting for Paul Simon. And then she threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into it by saying, if you're Bernie or bust, cut it out. You're being ridiculous. And then the Bernie or bust people are like, oh, you ruined it.
Yeah, Sarah Silverman did the same toward the end of her speech. And
that was Sarah Silverman.
Yeah, Sarah Silverman. So throughout the first night, I noticed that there were some subtle, not so subtle, some subtle, some not so subtle digs at the Bernie or bust individuals in the crowd. And from what I hear from people tweeting me, they were not too happy about that. They were angry. They were chanting. And I don't blame them because, just brushing them off and pretending as though they're all being crazy and they're being irrational is not going to help you at all, right? You need to, again, extend an olive branch, tell them that you understand, show them what the similarities are between Bernie and Hillary. Yes, there are going to be Bernie Sanders supporters that will never vote for Hillary, that will never support her, and there's nothing you can do about that. But there are those that are on the fence who realize that Donald Trump is a complete and utter nightmare and we cannot elect him. Now, I think that holding Hillary's feet to the fire, as Jimmy Dore mentioned, during our live coverage, is incredibly important. And I don't begrudge anybody for wanting to do that. Again, it's about Bernie Sanders' ideas. It's not about Bernie Sanders as a person. But one thing that I will say about, the first night of the DNC versus what we experienced at the RNC is in the beginning today, I felt just as relieved as you did, Cenk. It was a nice, refreshing moment to see that there was hope, optimism, a lot of positive messages being thrown around. But something kind of switched in me halfway through Cory Booker's speech because he reminded me so much of Barack Obama in 2008. And the more he spoke, the more angry I got because the more I realized that these are all platitudes and these are all empty promises. And Cory Booker is an elected official. You're talking about change. You're talking about representing progressives. You're talking about the liberal movement. Well, you could have been part of that already, and you haven't done enough. You see what I'm saying? You haven't been a fighter. Hillary Clinton, for some issues, was kind of a fighter, but those are social issues that were convenient to be a fighter for at that moment, If you want to be a real fighter, you do what Bernie Sanders does. You speak truth to power, you fight back against a corrupt political system, and you really drill that message home again and again until you make people rise up and want to fight for a revolution.
I totally agree on your analysis of the Cory Booker speech. I thought it was pretty good in the beginning, but then I was like, platitudes. And I've seen this movie before. Michelle Obama threw a dig at the Bernie Sanders supporters, not keeping it classy there. And it just doesn't help. You want them to vote for Hillary Clinton, insulting them is just not a productive way of doing it. So, totally agreed on that.
Yeah, I agree on those comments. Cory Booker, some of the platitudes I thought were fine, the quoting Maya Angelou. He was one of the speakers that apparently people have to explain what microphones are for because they seem to think that they need to yell at the entire crowd when you have a voice amplification device right in front of your face. But otherwise, a good speech. And look, in terms of the language he used, it was very standard politician, but at least he can speak like it's his thoughts. That he has a thought and then it goes through his face hole and it comes out at you. Whereas so many politicians were almost the only thing they do, aside from making calls for fundraising all day long, is delivering speeches, and yet they can't do it in a convincing way. I don't know what country the people tonight that were speaking represent, because I learned last week that we live in a smoking wasteland with Mexican zombies eating the few living humans. And they were talking about a country that has some problems, needs some things to change, but isn't the end times, basically. And overall, I definitely prefer that sort of language. There were some great speeches. I mean, Michelle Obama did a great job of personalizing. Like, you can do your things are okay, we have hope, but she can make it about her family in a way that makes it so much more real. And she referenced some real people too, which Bernie did. Aside from the speeches, we had that great the case study of someone whose life was basically ruined, at least temporarily, by Trump University. And I thought that was incredibly effective, both the ad and then also the woman who spoke afterward. Elizabeth Warren did a great job, and hopefully she'll be able to bounce back and be the person that we want her to be in future elections. There was other good stuff. I loved Bernie Sanders' speech. I loved almost everything about it. He jumped the shark a little bit like Elizabeth Warren on trying to give Hillary Clinton credit for things that she does not deserve credit for. But I think you sort of implied this during the speech. So many politicians who come in second place or third place barter their position for something. And he did too, but he bartered it for us. He bartered it for the positions that would make our lives better, not even his lives better. He's like 90 years old. He's doing this for us. He's not doing it for Secretary of State or to get his campaign debt paid off.
Yep.
Like, even if you never liked Bernie Sanders, if you hate you some bros, you should be able to look at that and then see that this is an incredibly principled guy who's been fighting his entire life for us.
They don't see
up
it.
until this speech, and not the last speech. He'll keep doing it until Election Day and beyond, and he deserves more credit than we can give him for that.
Yeah.
That's exactly the right way of looking at it. I think that's the rational way of looking at it. Hillary Clinton supporters I talked to today, they're like, what else does he want?
He doesn't want anything.
You're missing the point. He's not trying to do this for position or power. He's doing it, as John said, for us. And during Cory Booker's speech, by the way, they were chanting, war hawk, presumably about Hillary Clinton. So there's still a lot of disgruntlement, and he tried to power through it, and there was a lot of those moments. Jimmy, what do you think?
Well, tonight was about, hey, let's grow up and sell out and be grown up about it. And you're a child if you're not willing to grow up and sell out. And then while you're growing up and selling out, we're going to punch a hippie while you're doing it, because they just couldn't help themselves tonight. Michelle Obama gave it to him, and the hilarious Sarah Silverman had a great speech when she ad-libbed. I'm sure she didn't mean it, but it certainly was a punch a hippie moment. And I don't understand what it is about the Hillary Clinton supporters that they can't help themselves from punching a hippie. You know, I don't, that whole, you would never.
Sarah Silverman is not a Hillary Clinton supporter.
No, we're talking about, no, I'm talking,
I know, but she did, you said
you're right.
She gave an example of that.
Right. Well, she turned into a Hillary Clinton supporter. First thing she did. So that's the thing. So to me, it was good to hear Bernie Sanders pretend that Hillary's for all those things he said. I'll believe it when I see it, and I hope so. But that's what this is. The thing about they were all trying to shout down or squelch and mute the Bernie supporters in the audience tonight. I don't know how well that works, right? That's usually a right-wing tactic. Mm-hmm. That's not really what we do on the left. We're about messiness, we're about all that stuff. So we'll see what happens going forward. That can't be helping the Bernie people come around. So that's it.
Okay, so finally, let me wrap up by saying three important things. The speech we didn't talk about is from Anastasia Somoza. You might be wondering who that is. Well, if you don't know her, she's a disability rights advocate. And she told a speech about how when she was 9 years old, she went to the White House and Hillary Clinton met her. And then for the rest of her life, Hillary Clinton checked in on her and helped her. And I think that was more humanizing for Hillary Clinton than anything else I've ever heard, and more humanizing than all of Donald Trump's kids' speeches rolled into one. So there were great moments for Hillary Clinton like that. But I agree with these guys in general that both when Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders moved on to the second half of their speeches and tried to convince us that Hillary Clinton is for all the things that we're for, it was a noble effort, and they're right on some of that stuff.
He said we have disagreements. He didn't try to
Yes.
say she was on everything.
Yes, that's where Elizabeth Warren seemed a little less authentic.
She jumped the shark.
Right. She kept saying, that's why I'm with her, I'm with her. But she would attach progressive policy positions that Hillary Clinton sometimes fully shares, sometimes half shares, and sometimes doesn't really share at all, like being tough on the banks. So, but Elizabeth Warren had a great first half of the speech when she talked about progressive priorities, and it made you think she would have crushed the primaries if she ran, probably, and I thought she would have landslided Donald Trump, beat him by 20 points. And then Bernie Sanders, again, most of his speech was wonderful. It reminded you of all the reasons why you liked him, why you might have voted for him if you did, and why he actually fights for real policy positions and for us. And the thing that you've got to understand, and like I said, the last third of the speech was trying to get people to vote for Hillary. I get it, that's what it was about. But I want to end on the positive, where he understood it's not all about rainbows and unicorns. There's real pain in the country. There is real income inequality. There is real corruption. The system is rigged. And we've got to address that. We can't just do it with hope. We've got to be practical in how we fix that system. So seeing him like that, it was a little touching because it was a campaign that didn't win at the end, at least electorally. But I'm telling you, it was the start of the revolution. And so I think Bernie Sanders will be remembered as a great, great man who started this revolution. And part of that was this speech tonight. So to me, all the bumps in the road, etc., at the end, we live on, maybe appropriate, we leave on greatness from Bernie Sanders in starting a revolution that you and I and all of us together have to complete together.